I want to bring this topic that I started thinking about this. I've had like Isaiah Bond on the mind all week. We talked about him on Longhorn Blitz, and then last night, our Horns 24/7 Twitter account got tagged by the Senior Bowl and Jim Nagy that he was tweeting out some stuff on Isaiah Bond. And I started thinking, like, we've been talking about the Texas wide receiver rotation all offseason, and like, is Sark going to open it up? Is it going to be more all encompassing? Is it just going to be bigger in terms of number? And I'm starting to think like maybe we've been asking the wrong question, because I think, look, you're going to need to get Ryan Wingo on the field in some way, shape, or form. Like, he's going to need to get some snaps, going to need to get some targets. Same for Jonte Cook and Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden and DeAndre Moore. Like, DeAndre Moore's the guy I keep forgetting, and he's going to start day one of camp unless something unforeseen happens. He's going to be your starting slot receiver when the number one offense takes the field for the first time in camp. And I was like, well, think about it like this, because with Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy, and A.D. Mitchell moving on, that's 92% of your targets at the wide receiver position from last year that are gone. Throw in Jatavian Sanders, and it's close to like 96, 97% of the targets from last year are gone. You take all that into consideration, I'm like, the question I think we need to be asking ourselves is not, is Sark going to make this wide receiver rotation bigger? Who's going to fill the three roles that those three guys filled, and really the four roles, if you want to count the tight end that JT Sanders was? What was Xavier Worthy's role? With A.D. Mitchell, you really got to have Xavier Worthy. You didn't have to have him try to do everything. You basically had him available to do what he does best: take the top off of defense, go vertical, be your guy that can go catch a go ball. And you can get it to him in the short game, and he can burn off on defenses because, as we found out, he was the fastest man on the field every time he stepped on the field. A.D. Mitchell did some of that, but where was A.D. Mitchell best for Texas? Dude, red zone. Red zone, he was a monster. Not just in the red zone, but getting you in the red zone. And as horrible as your red zone offense was, good Lord, you needed something reliable in the red zone, and A.D. Mitchell was a big red zone target for Quinn Ewers. And what was Jordan Whittington's role? Well, he didn't have quite the numbers that the other guys had, didn't have quite the big plays. Dude, Jordan Whittington was money on third down. Like that, if you look at Jordan Whittington's catches, Jordan, while he was at Texas, I'd venture to say like probably 60-65% of them were on third downs. Like money downs, you're going to Jordan Whittington because you trusted him. That brings me to this wide receiver core. Who's going to be your guy that stretches the field? Is your go ball guy? Is your guy that the defense knows, hey, we need to roll a safety over the top because he's going to get by our corner. If he beats press, it's over. I'd like to think that's Jonte Cook, or Isaiah Bond. We know can do some of those things, but I like to think that's Jonte Cook. Am I wrong?
I think Isaiah Bond would be a safer bet just because he had the best verified speed out of anyone in the receiver group, at least in high school. Jonte Cook, look, don't get me wrong. Jonte Cook is incredibly explosive, but like long speed, 40-yard dash, I don't like. He's going to run slower than Bond, and he might honestly run slower than Wingo because Wingo isn't as explosive as Jonte. It'll take him a little longer to get going, but the long speed on Wingo with his strides as a verified 6'2", like he can go too. You know what I mean? So, and he's also of the actual receivers, and Niblett too. I'm blanking on Niblett as well. Thanks, Antoine. Great reminder. I think Bond Bond had some crazy track times out of, like, Bond was a top 20 prospect, if I remember correctly. I'm about to double check this. We have it on his profile, what he ran in high school. Oh, wow. We had him as number 43 in the country, number 2 athlete, but that was higher than the composite. Okay, he ran 4.74 at the National Combine heading into his what would have been right after his sophomore season.
Man, but dude, look, I'll say this in defense of anybody there.
Yeah, and that's also a slow track.
Dude, the Alamo
in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome.
Alamo Dome is insanely slow, and I don't know why, man. Guys go there and time horribly in the 40. Like I remember this was early on. Like Lake Seastrunk ran something like 4. It was like in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s. I'm like, dude, if if you timed him on a regular track, he's probably running low 4.4s, maybe high 4.3s if you're hand time.
Yeah, the Alamo Dome is at the National Combine is notorious for having a slow track for the 40. But Bond's PR was a 10.4, 8 in the 100 in high school and a 21.05 in the 200, which he ran in May of 2021, so his junior year of track. So, not bad at all. But with Niblett, Bond and Niblett are probably who I'd throw in front of Jonte. I think Jonte went sub 11, but he only had a couple times, and I do not think it was in the 10.4s or the 10.5s. Jonte's really impressive track thing was his long jump. I'm almost positive he went to state for the long jump. But like I think that it's kind of hard to answer like whenever you ask who I see is filling in the field stretcher role or things like that. I think it'd be easier to answer like Bond is definitely who I think finishes with the most receiving yards.
Okay. Yeah. I think so that's gonna get me to the second part here in a minute. But okay, let's say Isaiah Bond basically is in the Xavier Worthy role. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the AD Mitchell role, I think Jonte Cook. I just like Jonte's hands. I just like a guy that the way he looks in the ball, just you watching him in high school and especially watching him the times we got to watch him in practice, the way he looks it in, he's just strong with his hands. Maybe he could be that guy. Matthew Golden, I think, has the body to be that type of guy. But I'm going to give you a number on Silas Bolden. You're saying, Jeff, 5'7" Silas Bolden. How the hell is he a red zone guy? Silas Bolden, his contested catch rate, according to Pro Football Focus, 53% of contested catches Silas Bolden has made. He was 7 for 14 last year, 3 for 5 in 2022. Do you realize how insanely high a contested catch rate over 50% is? I mean, basically, that's a 5'7" guy winning more than half of the 50-50 balls that get thrown to him. I compare it, Jordan, to like, how could Dennis Rodman at like 6'6" be the greatest rebounder ever? He understood angles and positioning and things that just like to hear him described in The Last Dance. He's describing it like, oh yeah, how do you guys not know this? And we're like, yeah, none of us know this. We're not a rebounding savant. None of us we're the greatest rebounder that ever lived. Like you see it like nobody else does. Some guys just understand timing. They've just got a knack for that. That's in their skill set. I'm not saying Silas Bolden's going to be that guy, but he's got a chance, I think, to maybe be that guy. And then you're looking for who's going to be that guy on money downs, who's going to be that third down guy. And that's the one I think that's a little bit harder to see who's going to fill that role. But man, I go back to Isaiah Bond. You look at all the money down catches he had at Alabama, and I think that's where you look at it, because I started looking at the targets that Steve Sarkisian's number one receiver has gotten. You go back to his 2 Alabama offenses and his 3 Texas offenses. His number one guy in terms of targets has always been over 100. You had Jerry Jeudy with 108 in 2019, Devontae Smith with 145 in 2020. There was almost a 70 target gap at Bama that year between number 1 and number 2, because John Mechie was 2 and he was 69 targets behind Devontae Smith. That's how much they looked to Devontae Smith. If you remember, Jordan, remember that year, Jalen Waddle was hurt most of the year. They only got 5 games out of Jalen Waddle that year. Xavier Worthy was like 119 right around there each of the last 2 years, and I think he was like at 103 or 104 last year. So if you're the number one receiver in Sark's offense, you're going to get 100 plus targets. And Isaiah Bond last year at Alabama had 75. So you're looking at Isaiah Bond with the production he had, add another 25. If he emerges as the number one guy, 25 to 40 more targets somewhere in there. So I think if you're looking at who could emerge as a number one wide receiver for this team, I don't think there's any question, considering he can fill 2, maybe 3 of those roles that we just talked about. And he's your guy. And he looks like, he could be that number one guy. He's got that type of skill set, the speed, all that. I think Isaiah Bond's got the best chance to be a number one wide receiver on this team. And if he is, you fill it out from there. And then I think it becomes a case of, all right, who's filling roles, like who's trustworthy on a game-to-game basis. I'm fascinated to see, Jordan, how Sark does this, because Sark also likes a lot of targets for his running backs. You look at how much he targeted Jatavian Sanders. Like, I don't think Amari Niblack's going to get as many targets as Jatavian Sanders got each of the last 2 years. I mean, he was at 72 in 2022, and he was, I think, at 63, 67, something like low to mid 60s last year. I don't think Amari Niblack's going to get that many opportunities, but
no,
just because he doesn't have the proven track record. And when JT got those 70 plus targets in 2022, remember, you didn't have like a legit number 2 wide receiver. It was Xavier Worthy playing part of the year with one hand, and Jordan Whittington. That Isaiah Nair got hurt, and you never had that extra body at wide receiver really emerge. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I was just thinking, like, man, we're thinking about rotation. I'm thinking about roles. I'm thinking about, can Isaiah Bolden be a number 1 receiver, and what would that look like? And then what does the target disparity look like once you kind of expand it from there? So Jordan, I know you had something to say, but go ahead and take it away, pick it up with the receivers while I gotta find something here to back up one of my points, or to make a point, but go ahead with whatever you were going to say.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I don't think is getting talked about enough is Matthew Golden. Like, I know he transferred in from Houston, and I know, most Texas fans saw what he did to the Texas defense last year when they played in Houston. But, like, I feel like too many folks are just being like, Houston transfer Matthew Golden. It's like, no, this was a top 247 guy that Texas was really trying to get out of high school. Like, they wanted him very badly. He was a TCU commit, ended up decommitting once they fired GP, and it was going to be Texas, TCU, or UH. And he chose UH. We show a lot of love to N'Keal Shorts. He's the main reason that happened. So, I mean, yeah, I think if Bond is who I think is going to finish with the most receiving yards, I think Golden would be the safest bet for the second most. And, I mean, I know you're high on Bolden. For me, it is a little hard to get super excited about him just because of all the other weapons that are in the same receiver room. I also think that, like, Oregon State knew exactly what they were doing with him. Like, that was a phenomenal staff at Oregon State. And the defenses in the now dead Pac-12 are a lot different than the defenses in the SEC and the secondary you face in the SEC. Another thing about Amari Niblack, I think you made a great point. Like, I think Amari Niblack is probably going to be drafted higher than JT Sanders was. He's going to test better. He's bigger and is a better athlete. But off the things I've heard about Amari Niblack, or, the different things you see from him, his football IQ is not higher than JT Sanders is. And also, we got to remember, JT Sanders redshirted a 4-year, or was on special teams or whatever, a 4-year, right? He didn't really get his time to shine until his sophomore year on offense. Amari Niblack is expected to come in after moving in the spring and learn Sark's offense and be like the dynamic pass-catching receiving threat. Yes, Gunnar Helm is still on the roster, but I don't know. Like, Gunnar Helm probably can't get open that much versus Anthony Hill in practice. I'm sure Amari Niblack has a much higher success rate. He's just a better athlete, and he's a higher caliber guy. That's why he was ranked where he was ranked coming out of high school, and Gunnar Helm was where he was at. But I mean, they're going to need to get something out of both those guys. Thanks, Antoine. JT did have 0 catches as a freshman. Another thing about Niblack, too, he scored a touchdown versus Texas last year, and it was also on Instagram Live shortly after that game, if those remember correctly. But it's going to be a good group. There's also Ryan Wingo as well. I'm very, very, very – he's probably the guy who I'm most curious to see how that works. Outside of Xavier Worthy, Sark has never really consistently played like freshman at the receiver position. Right? Like, I'm not – Xavier Worthy is the only freshman that consistently played at Texas during the summer.
Yeah, because he had to.
Yeah, okay. But I'm just like, I'm not having a brain fart missing anyone else, I don't think.
No.
So with Wingo, like, I don't expect him to have the freshman season that X did. But, like y'all have said, you can't keep that guy off the field. You're going to have to design at least 2 or 3 plays from a game, or at least that's how I feel like. So interested to see how that unfolds.